So in terms of being in a diabetes renaissance, having had the disease for over 20 years, we, as those with diabetes, have never been more connected. We have never been able to collaborate on a global scale like what we're doing right now. From people on social media just kind of venting about their day-to-day struggles, emotionally, physically, with the disease, just it being welcome in the mainstream. I remember I went through my entire childhood and early adulthood imagining that my success as someone with type 1 diabetes was gauged by how many people knew I had it. The better I was at it, the fewer people knew about it, right? Because I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. It was just, and that has completely lifted. People are talking about it, and it's a wonderful thing in a lot of regards. More people are being impacted, right? There are just simply more cases of it at an alarming rate all over the world, all kinds of demographics. And so, it's starting to become an undeniable sore in the healthcare system. And thus we're kind of starting to enter a new phase of technology and resources available to us. And with our greater community, with our greater connections, we're starting to hear more anecdotal stories being tested, verified, dismissed based on people's actual experiences and our ability to share it and report back on what it is we're doing. And it's clear to see that the general public, the patients, if you will, people with type 1 diabetes, know more about the disease than at any point ever, right? Before, we were coming from a place where it was like, diabetes is genetic, beta cells don't work, I take insulin. And that's it. That's all we could know. That was just what we had available to us, and that was it. We know more about the disease and how it operates than ever before. And so much of it is coming from our own curiosity, which is outstanding. And with this increased curiosity, we're finding even more and more variations of diabetes. You have LADA, type 1.5, type 3, type 2, type 1, and all of like a full spectrum of those with type 1. It's not just a clear-cut case for everyone. So with all of these varying degrees of expression in a diabetic case, there's a lot of people seeing success with multiple modalities, whether it be dietary and lifestyle changes, energy work, energy therapies, alternative healing practices, herbs, supplements. People are seeing real substantial results independent of anything that was available to us as a resource when we were completely dependent on the healthcare system. And with these realizations, we're starting to separate ourselves a little bit from the influence of the healthcare system, because we realize that they may not know, or they may not be letting on how much they know about what we can do for ourselves. And we've begun to build community around that. For one, the Beta Cell Project on Discord, that's a community I started talking about what else we can be doing. We have tons of success stories, decreasing insulin, getting off of insulin, 20 to 30 plus years on insulin, brand new, extending honeymoons, all different kinds of things. A relatively new one to me, Crushing Type 1 on Facebook. It's run by a gentleman who is an anesthesiologist whose daughter was just newly diagnosed, and he's doing a lot to bring social awareness to not just what it means to be a parent to someone with type 1 diabetes, but also how we can be interacting with the industry itself to bring about meaningful change, as well as Reddit, T1 remission started by a friend of mine from the Beta Cell Project, talking about the same thing. It's just another outlet for people to connect and talk about how we can address diabetes and ultimately not have it anymore. So, talking about the success that people have had, multiple modalities, I have 3 categories here that have all had anecdotal success in either eliminating diabetes symptoms or greatly reducing them. Qigong, for those that are unfamiliar, it is an Eastern practice of energy movement through the body, bodily awareness, emotional release with physical consequences, how we hold energy in our body, organ-specific connections to emotions and how we can help clear that, lymphatic clearance, grounding energy. I know someone who halved their insulin use based simply on a commitment to a Qigong practice. You have supplements, vitamin D3, K2, quercetin, resveratrol, magnesium, different cleanses and detoxes to help eliminate accumulated toxins in the liver, the gut, the nervous system, the immune system, what have you. I know someone who has gone through all of these things and gotten off insulin completely after about 2 years of insulin dependence. Again, incredible stuff and something not a lot of people talk about. And then diet, eliminating processed foods, focusing on whole foods, and improving our dietary hygiene, whether that be meal timing, whether that be the quantity of food that we're eating, the frequency of meals, all of the different factors that go into how we consume food and what those foods are supplying us when we eat. And with all of these alternative therapies, the overarching feeling of society as a whole is like, okay, this is good, right? This is exciting. But I still have diabetes. It's good, but is it good enough? And so we're still searching for this final piece. What ties it all together and puts a bow on it so that I don't have to do this anymore? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, in my unique situation, what am I missing? Is it one thing? Is it multiple things? Is it an order of operations issue where I need to do A, B, and C first before I get to X, Y, Z? Is there no real singular right answer? Are there multiple solutions? Is anyone actually off insulin? And like I mentioned before, the answer is yes. There are people who have been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, insulin dependent, and are now off for an extended period of time, a year plus, almost 2 years at this point. But with that, right, you say, okay, Bowie, you say you know someone who's cured diabetes, but like, what does that mean? What were his conditions before? What were their conditions before? How can I take what they've done and apply it to me so that I don't have to do this anymore? And that's when you have to start to ask yourself, what is a cure? And I put the Trojan horse here because we're going to branch into what the healthcare industry is working at in terms of bringing about therapies to help us along. But this is a really important time for us as a diabetes community. We have to remain very clear about what we want. What do we want from a cure? Is this just, I don't want to be on insulin anymore? Or is this, I want my body to be healthy enough to create its own insulin again? And there is a difference. We need to be able to differentiate between those two things. Insulin, we'll see, is a symptom. It's surface level. There is something deeper at play here that we need to make sure that we're addressing. Because I would argue the cure that we're being offered now in regards to stem cell islet transplants it's answering a question that was posed by an old, outdated understanding of how diabetes operates, right? We all remember our onboarding when we were first diagnosed. It's genetic. There's nothing you could have done. It was going to happen regardless. Your autoimmune system went rogue, killed off your beta cells, and there's nothing we could have done about it. So your beta cells are wrongfully targeted. You take exogenous insulin now to regulate your blood sugar. Cross your fingers and hope that the medical research and biotechnology industries come up with some kind of solution, right? That's where we're at, or that's where we were at. And so with our understanding there, what does that mean for expectations when it comes to a cure? We want to resolve the issues, right? Beta cells got attacked, don't make insulin. So we would need beta cells that make insulin. We may need to manipulate the genes in our body that made our beta cells not make insulin properly. And then downstream of that, what are some of the food sensitivities, comorbidities, complications, whether that be liver, kidneys, gut? Maybe we take some medication on the side to help take care of those while we have beta cells that make insulin, right? Pretty straightforward. And then kind of like secondary to resolving the issues is the ability to prevent the issue from happening again, right? Is this just kind of like, okay, well, I'm missing beta cells that make insulin. Why don't I just plug in beta cells that make insulin and then everything goes back to normal, right? We want to make sure that we don't let this happen again. Because what's in a cure? If we give ourselves beta cells that make insulin, but we don't actually know how to prevent it from happening again, is it a cure? In my eyes, no, because we have no way of preventing it from happening again. And so let's reflect back on what we've learned in this diabetes renaissance, right? Diabetes is a symptom of greater systemic imbalance. The genetic explanation accepted for the longest time is incomplete. Completely incomplete. There's not a clear line of inheritance. 90 to 95% of the people with the genes that correlate with diabetes don't actually get diabetes. So there's something else at play here that we are not acknowledging. The timeline of disease progression is longer than we originally thought. A lot of times it was like, didn't have diabetes, you had a triggering event, and now you have diabetes. And so people really focused on triggering events for the longest time. But then when you start to audit your health in the years and months leading up to your diabetes diagnosis, we started to see that, no, there was a lot going on before diabetes came about, before the triggering event that would lead us to believe that something was not right. And this could be liver toxicity, dysfunction, antibiotic use, infections, bacteria, virus, nervous system regulation, traumatic events in life, an immune system on overdrive for a litany of different things. And then you combine all of that with the nutrient poor food and downright harmful ingredients being pushed in society right now, and the systemic impacts it has on cellular environments and their ability to function properly. And so we see in this graphic here that diabetes, what we see as the problem that we want an answer for, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? That's the most prevalent, inconvenient symptom that we have. And what I want to stress is that when it comes to accepting a cure, we need to make sure that we are not just simply focused on the most annoying symptom of them all. we need to pay attention to the underlying foundational issues that manifested this most annoying symptom. And unless we do, all we're doing here is managing a symptom, which by definition is not a cure, right? So I really want everyone to commit this visual to memory, because unless the cure that achieves resolving this, right? Oh, beta cells and insulin, no more diabetes. That's awesome. Unless we get this and we address this, not a cure in my eyes. So let's update it, right? Let's update it and make sure that we're getting what we want. And so notice I've switched these. Before, it was the main issue was the blood sugar regulation. Now, let's address the underlying issues and imbalances. Why did this happen, and what can we do to prevent it from happening again? From an educational standpoint, making sure that people know about their bodies and know about the systems and the environment, lifestyle, and diet factors that we can use to influence them in a positive way. And then once we have those foundations, how can we then use them intelligently to resolve the symptoms, which would be the blood sugar regulation, insulin independence, dietary freedom, and healthy, sustainable functioning beta cells and the resulting food sensitivities and comorbidities. This is what I expect from a cure, from the left to the right. And then this is a huge cause for emotional distress in a lot of people new to the disease, because they're seeing that with our recent advancements in the diabetic community in terms of our understanding of the disease development, modern allopathic medicine's understanding of the body and the application of their available resources is not very good. Objectively not very good, right? You're not going to find a doctor that talks about food and nutrition in a way that's going to influence the diabetic state, the disease state. They don't know it. It's not their fault that they don't talk about it. They just simply, it's not a part of their lexicon. It's not a part of their curriculum. They don't know it. What they do know is medication interactions and symptom management, right? So like that's all they know. That's all they know how to do. And it is just not enough. Not only not just not enough, it's downright harmful and it's hurting us, and people are not getting better. And we recognize that. And so the physician-patient rapport, very poor, partially because physicians don't have enough time to hear out what patients have to say. They're overloaded. They're seeing thousands of patients. How the hell are they supposed to give what every patient needs? They can't. And so the patient experience, the patient education, the patient experience is deteriorating. It's so poor. Nobody wants to go to the doctor anymore. So few people actually trust medicine. They're educating themselves, finding relief in places away from medicine. And the rift between the two continues to grow.